a good life, it isn't to, like, be rich and be surrounded by, like, all these material things. A good life is to be happy, like, to be happy with what you're doing. Be happy with the people that are around you. Um, and having all these experiences in life, like um, connected to culture, language, art.
If someone walked up to me today and asked me what a good life means, more awareness of my surroundings and the environment and the animals and kind of just finding my place in all of that and sitting on top of the mountain and just realizing that, like, wow, this is it's such a big ecosystem and we're all a part of it in one way or another, whether it be learning all those traditional knowledge growing up as a Vantak Wichin, you know, and then passing all that on to the next generation.
A good life for me is always focusing on self, meaning that I really like to use the medicine wheel concept. So, um, looking at my physical and the emotional and the mental um, and the four aspects of that mentally. And if I'm missing like one or two, those that I know that there's something missing.
I think what it means to me to live a good life would be to live healthy, such as like sobriety, healthy eating, some sort of exercise, and taking care of your mental health is one of the biggest ways to live a good life, I find.
I always try to live my life in a good way to make sure that my medicine wheel is always around and always circular and it's not uneven in any aspects emotionally or physically or in any other of those aspects either. So I try to make sure that I'm getting in that vitamin D, going outside, and walking a bit, or I'm challenging my brain, doing some math questions, or having a conversation with somebody about how I'm feeling that day. And I try to make sure that I do this on a day-to-day basis, and try to make sure that I put in the effort to be the best human that I can possibly be.
Pour moi, une bonne vie, c'est de parvenir à vivre une vie qui est équilibrée. C'est vraiment ça qui est essentiel pour moi. Et quand je dis équilibré, j'entends ici d'être capable de rencontrer ses différents intérêts, ses différents goûts, ses besoins, ses aspirations. C'est d'être capable donc de marier les différentes sphères de notre vie. Alors, le travail, oui, mais aussi donc les loisirs, les amis, la famille, l'amour, l'exercice. Donc, tout ça, être capable de créer une harmonie.
For me personally, I think a good life would be like to be able to live as you're comfortable in who you are and where you come from, and not like be afraid to voice your thoughts, voice your concerns about you and your people and the people you care about.
The way that I think of success is different than the way that I thought of it growing up in terms of going to finishing school, going to post secondary, getting a job, and that's fine. I know a lot of people who do that and are happy, but I also like to celebrate those who are figuring it out, or those who are just trying to work with others, those who are happy at home, just to acknowledge people on their own journeys, because we all have so many different goals and dreams, and I think it's important to recognize that, and not just the people who are like on billboards or people who are well known.
Finishing my degree has definitely been one of my personal proudest moments, as well as my journey with my Indigenous identity. I've always known that I have Indigenous ancestry, that my family is Indigenous, that I myself am, but it's definitely been the last few years that I've really taken it into my own hands to dive deeper and get more involved and to ask questions and to really try to be part of the community.
Yeah, and all the self-doubt and thinking that I couldn't. So I was like afraid to reach out for help. And I know in the beginning I did really poorly. So I was like just thinking negatively about myself. But so I end up like having to take a year off because I didn't do well. But then I always had that goal of wanting to succeed. So then I, overcame that and I knew that this is where I wanted to be.
Another big challenge was language as well, because like during that time, that was when the Indian residential school system and the Indian day school system was literally finishing in late 1990s. So both my grandfather and those who were close to me didn't want to speak our language. So I never grew up with that aspect of my life until recently.
My mom taught me how to bead when I was young, like 8 to 10 years old. Never got to see my grandma bead. But I have a picture of my grandma beside my beading table. I have a picture of my great grandma that taught my mom how to bead right beside my beading table. And just like having them there beside me while I'm beading, thinking about my ancestors.
We're able to approach a lot of these contentious issues from the Indigenous specific or the BIPOC lens. Additionally, the queer lens as well. A lot of our culture and our varying culture, we all sort of meet together at a certain nexus, and then from that area, we look at the issues and see how it could particularly be affecting our communities.
In the Need to Be culture, we really cherish the children and youth because we know that they're going to be like the next generation that are to be helping and caring for the people and the elders. So having their voice really helps to bring like change and to also help sustain the culture and the environment and their voices and to really help them uplift one another and to
de l'imposteur. Je parlais justement avec Michel Audette, donc ici, qui me disait qu'il y a une seule personne n'est jamais représentante de toute une nation, de toute une communauté. On est une partie de cette représentation-là, peu importe d'où est-ce qu'on vient, peu importe de qui on est. Ça m'a vraiment aidé à relativiser mon vécu, relativiser qui je suis. Donc, c'est pour ça que j'essaie de m'impliquer, de faire ma part dans tout ça. Et avec les autres, je me dis, ben, je serai une partie, un exemple de ce que c'est que la réalité autochtone au Québec désormais. Et ça me rend et ça me rend fier maintenant de mon identité. Ça fait partie de moi. Je suis peut-être pas un autochtone type, mais je suis un autochtone qui essaie justement de faire sa part, d'aider les choses et aussi d'apprendre plus sur lui-même et de sa culture. Donc justement, là, je suis très débordé ces temps-ci, mais j'ai vraiment le tendre projet.
I always think back about that saying that we walk in two worlds as Indigenous people. And I've walked in two worlds ever since I could remember. I've always grown up in the city, but I've always had an escape to traditions, an escape to language and culture throughout my whole entire life, which I'm very privileged and I'm very honored, to have that escape as well, because so many of our people who, grow up in the city, don't get that opportunity to, have that escape.
My language is a reflection of who I am and where I come from. So it supports me in the sense that when I speak or when I learn with others, it brings me closer to home, especially when you think about how language has, like, diction is specific to time and place. So everything that I'm learning is relevant to me and to the land that I live in. And that makes me feel more connected both to myself and also with my community, including the broader like Inuit community that's here in the north coast of Labrador.
when I went there, there was like, all these people all over. It was a full house. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking for, the people you don't see, the people that are out there. I was like, what? There's 30 of us, young people. It's like that number is nothing compared to like how many are out there struggling just at a day-by-day basis.
I've always known I'm a helper, like in my teen years, but I didn't know how to use that trait. So the program really helped me grow into, I guess you would say, my calling. I guess I had a hard time asking for help. That was hard. So for someone who's struggling or needs assistance, don't be afraid to go to your professors or go to student services or anybody that can help you get out of the little rut you may be in. Just don't be afraid to ask. A lot of people, they're there to help you, and they're willing to, and they're happy to help you, and they want you to be successful.
7 Gens helped me in my class. I've been able to help conduct ceremonies and learn how to pick the medicines. And I find that that really helps me and heals me, and knowing more about the medicines and ceremonies.
Our knowledge has evolved to a point where that people who are older might think that like we don't know what we're talking about, but in reality we're just adapting to how the world is going, and we're sharing our knowledge like that. And people who are like around my age are more likely to listen to me because I might be more relatable to them. Like your ego gets really big as you get older, but you might not know that. So like when a 16-year-old is telling you something that you might not agree with, you're just gonna brush it off. You're gonna say, nah, I don't agree with you. But when a 16-year-old is talking with another 16-year-old, if the 16-year-old has a point, you'd be like, oh, that's cool. I learned something from you.
A couple weeks ago, I was able to speak at the Yukon government's accountability forum for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, Two-Spirit plus people. And I was given a few minutes there, but I was given that space, and I was listened to, and yeah, just a lot of not being tokenized anymore, and it's amazing.
Programs like this and funding like this are supremely important to engage the youth, because in the way that I think older generations might have previously or still been a little bit dismissive towards youth, I think that we also expect them to be fully fledged adults when they turn of age, sort of like flipping a switch. So I think that we forget that we need to invest in youth before they become young adults.
Seeing others reach out, seeing others speak up, it made me it made me made me feel less scared, less to come out of under that shell. And that's why I think like all these Indigenous youth coming out is exciting, because that gives the next generation of youth more power.
Ils se créent des nouvelles valeurs, ils en abandonnent d'autres. Les jeunes, profondément, ils réfléchissent, ce sont des chercheurs, des penseurs. Et donc, ils ont cette capacité à réfléchir, notamment pas juste à ce qui est, mais aussi à ce qui pourrait être. Ils sont dans le possible. La jeunesse a un don merveilleux qui est d'être capable de voir encore les différentes manières de faire qui sont possibles. Comment est-ce qu'on pourrait faire les choses? Ils sont donc devant des possibilités que l'habitude ou que la paresse ont fait disparaître donc pour les vieilles générations.
Planting seeds where we can. like to teach our Inuit youth to gain their voices, to gain their identity, to be part of who they are, where they come from, and to learn our own history and not just like the European history or not about like the American history and Southern Canada, but like our own history that was taken from us through residential and federal day schools, and like be proud of where we come from, who we are, because like once we have that in ourselves, in our and be proud of where we come from, I think we can do a lot more and like be more aware of what is going on in our communities, and hopefully that will encourage Inuit to share their voices because we all have a voice.
On devrait faire plus confiance aux jeunes et aussi faire plus confiance aux enseignants. Là, je pourrais peut-être tomber dans un autre discours, mais je pense que c'est important puis que ça peut être sa place ici. Souvent, un des problèmes avec les écoles, c'est qu'on essaye tellement d'uniformiser tout le monde pour atteindre des résultats qu'on va justement tuer la créativité. On va justement tuer la réflexivité. On va appliquer des recettes qui fonctionnent, qui marchent, parce qu'on atteint des résultats. On atteint des résultats, oui, mais au détriment d'autres choses, notamment de l'innovation, de la créativité, de la liberté, de certaines valeurs telles que la coopération. Donc, je pense que pour le futur, ce qu'on devrait faire justement, c'est de prendre en compte que des fois, avoir des résultats, ce n'est pas simplement avoir des bonnes notes. Que la réussite peut se définir de différentes manières. Et que ce qu'on devrait faire, c'est vraiment travailler à partir du potentiel des jeunes.
I find some of my proudest moments would be passing on the teachings that I learned here at Seven Gens to my son. It feels like an achievement for me when my son is repeating the words and questions and vocabulary that I learned. I also find it as an achievement to hear him teaching his friends and his teachers